Hi friends, so we have this lecture on risk conscious operation management of complex engineering system, and therein we know that human factor plays a very important role. And in the first lecture we saw the background and introduction of the consciousness. In second lecture we saw the evaluation of consciousness right from ancient era to the modern era. Now that there are many institutes and scientists were spread across the world, they are working on consciousness, and then we saw that how we can plug in the state of the knowledge when really we think of our subject risk conscious. And it was very important to understand how we will embed into risk conscious culture this whole subject, and try to create a human model, because that is our ultimate objective. Risk reduction is possible if we reduce error in the operational ecosystem. So this is a now dedicated discussion on neuroscience of consciousness, because we have to touch upon the neuroscience even if we are working on a classical theory of I square IT or IIT, or if you work on any other theory of quantum. So neuroscience is the basically you can say the board where everything is written on the wall to start our procedure. So let us take first as a neuroscience and consciousness. So we are into the introduction of the topic that is neuroscience of consciousness, and there cannot be any other illustration better than this to start with. Consciousness plays out the role of brain. We have a spinal cord where communication with the central nervous system and finally to the peripheral nervous system start through ganglion, and the nerves are there, they communicate through the whole body. So any sensation here travels to the mind, and again we get a command to action part. Similarly, some thought appears at the level of brain, and then it gives direction to this mind. So that is how the whole system operates. Now we know that this is what we were considering when we talk about the human model, that is thinking and perception at the level of the brain, and then how it reflects into the performance, whether it is a physical performance or mental performance, both. And we say that brain and nervous system are two faculties that determine the human reaction and response that we discussed just now. The brain turns in turn comprised of the cerebrum, brainstem and cerebellum. I'll show you in the next slide. Cerebellum is at the back of the brain, cerebrum front or top area, and then the communication and processing of information occurs, and then finally the action part. As far just to understand the complexity, there are over 100 billion neurons in the human brain, and everywhere depending on the kind of activity, the neurons and its connection, they are called synapses. They are in the activation level. Now that activation depends on how that particular local brain area is getting utilized. And how we know that? We know that when we using the modern instrument, whether it is fMRI or tomography, we do, and we study the brain areas, and of course we try to make some conclusion, but they are basically evidence, in the form of evidence. still the brain has to be understood what happens at the chemical level, what happens at the electrical level. Those areas have to be understood in detail. These connections of interconnection define the brain activity through very feeble electric pulses, which we can see on our tomography or fMRI. Human consciousness that manifest or reaction or proactive action, vision, speech, sound, touch that we discuss and test. They are all basically the decision that what it is comes from, even if it is some object is moving or a person is seeing on the shop floor, all the processing happens, the size of the object, the color of the object, the distance, the edges of the object, and that is what it tells us what action should be taken to avoid the accidents. The brain communicates, other body parts communicate through the set of nerves called nervous system. So, just now we saw that on this slide figure what is that nervous system it comprises of. Okay. And then nervous system has two major parts, central and peripheral, of course. So, now if we go neuron, we have already explained, and then here only we are adding that neuron site exchange. This is called synapse. Okay. And dendrites, they communicate the information from here, whatever chemical processing activation is taking place at the nucleus level, and that's how communication between neuron we see that translates into perception, communication and feeling actually. The nucleus is as we can see here, it is a oval shaped structure in the body of neuron. It contains two nucleons and chromosomes necessary for the coded production of the proteins and cells. Dendrite interface with the other neurons, so dendrite and other neurons for chemical and biological reaction. The central nervous system it is not only remaining limited at the brain level, the central nervous system also have neurons that play out, and they communicate with these neurons for senses or for any command. In this case, we will discuss the role of various faculties involved in the cognitive as consciousness processing faculty on the brain. So, now henceforth onward, we will take brain as a subject and we will try to see, because we have seen the role of neurons over here, now we will see the brain and which area or which faculty has what function, that we will talk about it. Okay. So, we see that the brain, I think many of you would have seen this figure, or let us, so there is a frontal area lobe, okay. Then there is a parietal lobe, okay. Then we have a temporal lobe. So, temporal lobe comes somewhere here, occipital lobes, temporal lobe means, let us say it is connected with the auditory and other functions. Then occipital lobe is coming to visual processing of information. Parietal lobe is a part which goes like there is a one first let us understand the frontal lobe. Frontal lobe has got a huge component in terms of thinking, perception, processing and all that. And then we have lateral sulcus where all the information passes are like, suppose if it has to go to the occipital lobe. So, here the pons has a role, and cerebellum. Cerebellum is like a station where the information processing played out like balancing information, and body remains balanced. So, this kind of processing happens here. So, these are various parts. The frontal lobe is involved in the intellectual planning, sense of why we are discussing is they are integral part of our operations. So, which area of the brain which they happen, like we do for a engineering component, what component plays what role, and then if any problem is there, we try to see, looking at the symptom, whether which component was involved, which component. So, why the same procedure should not be applied to the human? especially when we accept that it is contributing, human is a major contributor to the, and we are trying to find out the way of reducing human intervention in, especially in operation ecosystem. So why we not treat human also as a engineering system? Of course, it is much more complex than the engineering system, but then unless until we understand what happens at the level of brain, which area of the brain playing out a role, and then that this process has already started also, like electroencephalography in my lab, we were trying to see what happens when you are at the having high stresses, what happens when you are sitting in meditative posture, what happens when you are doing some manipulation on the control console, and I think these signals were having characteristic which can be used for performance monitoring. Of course, how we do it and all, what should be the protocol, that is a question, it depends on the organization, system and all. But then at least science should be developed actually, that is the objective. So, this is a front area, where, and that is why we know that helmet is one of the thing which saves us from preserving these faculties, processing of data information, particularly control room environment, is in support of action and decision as part of knowledge based component. Because when situation is complex, then this whole globe or section comes into the very heavy load, because the lot of inputs are coming into the control room, and we have to think and take a decision, and that is most difficult for not skill based or rule based, but it is very, even for rule based also, but rule based and knowledge based, they require a lot of intense processing happening at the level of the area between the frontal lobe and parietal lobe is known as a percentage area, and this area is basically a somatosensory cortex, and where the signal coming from outside, they are processed here in terms of physical level actually. Okay. So here it is the primary somatosensory cortex, okay, cortex on posterior gyrus and prima, that means between these two areas, okay, is general interpretive area. These lobes are responsible for imagination and give sense of time and space. Very important when you are on the shop floor, or when you are there in the control room, when you are supervising a lot of signals and methods. These lobes are responsible for imagination and give sense of the time and space. Okay? And I think time and space is very important, because if the time is short for performing an action, then it becomes an uncritical path, and these lobes, they are loaded actually. Okay? So then it results into like time window, if it is available window is something, and actual window required this one, then if the actual window is requiring taking more time, then there is a reason for stress that we have here. Pons acts as a neutral relay center. So pons basically is when informations are passed, is like electrical relay. It actuates and keeps sending and receiving the information from rest of the body to the globe. So, and then this is of course just to give a holistic view, the brain top view plan. We have two halves are there, and this is the, you can say, the frontal lobe. This is occipital region. The images are processed over here and then reflected. As we go ahead, we will see more and more clarity. Now, when action part is there, but we know that all our activities are governed or governed by the emotions, how actively we are involved, how emotionally we are involved. So it is, and these kind of phenomena, they happen in the limbic system. Limbic system comprises of mainly of amygdala, cingulate gyrus, the hindbrain backside, and deals with the establishing emotions. It's a very important component. It is shown the half, it is inside core part of the brain actually. Main function, the limbic system links higher and lower brain function and helping with memory storage. Again, very important component for operational ecosystem. The memory, not only memory information communication, that also. Amygdala plays a role in fight and fight, okay, when there is an emergency. Very important term is used in operation fight and flight, while Shinjuguet gyrus assigns specific steps to discern emotions. Thalamus performs relay of information to cerebral cortex and outer layer. So it is like our telephone exchange, in just lighter side I am telling. It passes on the information and to various areas of the brain. Okay. Hypothalamus, very important component, controls the pituitary gland and secretes the hormones and chemicals that regulate the body, and whether you are healthy or not healthy, this fellow hippocampus or hypothalamus, it that decide, of course, I'm sorry, hypothalamus limbic system, it is here actually. Okay. Okay, so we saw these vital organs in body which affect our performance, which enhances our performance, and which are not only performance and the main driving force, that is emotions, how the emotions play out at the level of brain, that we have seen. Now the other vital organs, like if you say, if you cut the brain dissection, if you do and see the cut from the center, then these areas will be available. This is cerebrum. So this area, as I told you, cerebrum is the area and cerebellum is this area, and then we have pons, over here. As I said, relay for communication and all that, medulla is there, brain stem, and other parts, hypothalamus we have discussed. Okay, and this is the area for occipital region. Here it was for hearing and other things. Hearing is this one. So brain showing vital parts like cerebrum, pituitary gland, hypothalamus and thalamus, midbrain. Pons also facilitate balancing function of the body. Actually, balancing function is done by cerebellum, but pons also has got some role in this one. Body, sleep and arousal, and in processing of visual and auditory information. So that means pons has got other than the body some communication in terms of audio, visual component also is played out here for communication with the brain. Cerebellum, the coordination of muscular activities, body balance, motor functions, and performed by cerebellum. So all our autonomous body functions, balancing, body, they are played out at the level of muscular activities, how it happens, and then finally it communicates with the brain also. So the vital organ, because it has been seen that when we are working, the balance of the body, especially when we are working on the machines, lifting, screwing, and this thing, the balance is very important. So these components, they play out this role, and we should know about these components. Consciousness and neuroscience. Now, how we connect neuroscience with the consciousness? So in modern era, so you can see there, probably many of you would have seen these images, active area in the brain, and it is mapped by the functional magnetic response imaging, resonance imaging. So fMRI, well known technique actually, or PET scan, positron emission tomography scanning is another technique that we have here. So how we can see the level of consciousness into our activities in the body, and that's how there are some nuclear medicines also we are using over here, nuclear methods to trace the body. Let us say for sleep apnea cases, how the active product goes there and how it affects the body, those kind of things we are doing. So there are three major scientific procedures in neuroscience to study consciousness: experimental studies and neural correlates of consciousness we have discussed, stimulation of electrical signals, that means generate some signals and see it is playing out, senses are playing out, and actions are also playing out. Ablation, removal of the physical, it is basically physical removal of tissue, and surgical radiation. Sometimes some medicine also introduced into the body. So this method is called ablation. Neuroscience labs and clinical experts have been applying this procedure to understand the symptom at the level of brain by subjecting patients with generating stimuli of various thoughts, events, and trying to understand the response of the response employing fMRI or positive transcoding. Study of neural correlates of consciousness has been used and reported widely in R&D. So for R&D, NCC, and there are electroencephalography has been also been used a lot in research. So let us see what is NCC. It is defined as minimal neuronal condition jointly necessary for one specific conscious sensation. So that means this becomes the condition or scale or minimal set that are required to have a level of consciousness. The minimal set is out. NCC constitutes the minimal set of neural events. Neural events means some thought or some action for speech, how it is playing out at the level of brain, and sufficiently for specific conscious perception. If I am given to identify certain things, I should have a minimum set of neural NCCs to respond to that particular episode. So empirical modeling. This is another way. Neuroscientists use empirical approach to discover neuron correlates of NCC of subjective phenomena, that is neural changes with which necessitate and correlate with the specific experience. So have some sort of a correlating table for which experience what should be the neural correlate, and then using at that whether it is less or more, take a decision. So the challenge is that science of consciousness must explain the exact relationship between subjective and mental states in brain, the nature of relationship between the conscious mind and the electrochemical is the body. So at present we are going by symptoms. We when we do not have the required knowledge for any machine or anything or any phenomena, we develop some sort of attributes. They will be 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D, and then we divide them in certain parts, but they are empirical phenomena. Actually, if we start from the physics, or even if we start from the neurological experiences, then we will be able to define it explicitly. Till that time, it is a working procedure. Then nuclear psychology and neuropsychology have come from focusing on the symptoms rather than the mind itself. So these are the various approaches, and NCCs are very actively being used in neuroscience. Now there are some scales that are available to measure the consciousness, especially in neuroscience, that is called Glasgow Coma Scale. In neuroscience, there is a measurement system for monitoring awareness. Now, whenever patient is given sedation, and then we want to see some procedure has to be performed. So when he comes back, the awareness levels are measured, or even during the procedure also awareness levels are measured to enable the procedure to be completed. So there the Glasgow Coma Scale is used. Then cognitive consciousness is a neurological scale which aims to give a reliable and objective way of recording the state of a person's awareness state by cognitive consciousness. It is very straightforward. For everything there has been a scale has been made. It is empirical approaches, collect the data, try to figure out what are the response levels, and then generalize it and use it at all the levels. The level of consciousness is the most common scoring system used to describe the level of consciousness is a person following trauma, brain injury. So this is something simple. Level of consciousness is measured. Scoring system, a person is assessed against the resulting point given. As I mentioned, we have some indicators, we have some standards, observations, normal observation, and then if it is abnormal below or above that, then we the neuroscientific community, they take a decision. As I mentioned, in the simulator environment, we have worked on certain experiments. Electroencephalography. Electroencephalography is something which studies the response of your brain waves, alpha, beta, gamma, theta, all those things. And suppose if there is a predominance of this like beta, that means you are at like awake and mentally active. Okay, awake and resting. Then we have dominance of alpha 8 to 13. Then we are sleeping. Then we have theta wave 4 to 7 hertz. Probably lowest or even lower than that is deep sleep. We have this. So you can see activities make the spectrum changing, and that is where I would say we are going into the spectrum region to characterize our behavior of the mind. So basically it is done by install there is a EEG instrument, then these sensors are connected to the various areas of the brains as I mentioned, and then a person's in the control room environment or in the simulator environment, we try to see if he is actively working on the control console, what are the level of consciousness. Okay. And suppose if there is no activity in the console or in the control room, then what is level, and somewhere awaking area and very active area, we get 30 to 8 these signals, because he is not in sleep mode, and he is not also deep sleep mode. So our spectrum we get is this one only, and then there are analyzer that are available, and we can see which area of the brain was more active for which component. Suppose frontal cortex, when thinking is involved, action is not involved much, then it will give the more electrical signal. I mean, only physician can talk more confidently on this, but my experience in the control simulator environment is this one. This is a figure courtesy from medical today, news today, and this is also courtesy from dreamstime.com. I would like to thank them, because this two images help me to explain the electroencephalography procedure for consciousness measurement. So we saw the neuroscience of consciousness, how consciousness is measured. So let us now, since we say consciousness is measured, we say consciousness exists at the level of the brain, and there is for us the roadmap is clear. We have to formulate our attributes for various activities of the consciousness, and which causes lead to error or lack of attention, awareness or focus. Okay. So that's how we have not gone by symptoms, we have gone by measurement, what we do, and that might reduce the uncertainty associated with the human factor performance prediction. Thank you.